Good morning. Okay, so I'm very excited this month. This month is forensic psychology. So it's of course not the forensic psychology that you're going to see in your blackboard with your assignments. It's my forensic psychology. So it's linked to Pluto. This entire month, we're going to talk about the Pluto archetype and the Black Moon archetype, Lilith, but we're also going to interject Neptune and Chiron because it's the spiritual adulting when we actually stop the nonsense of the Saturn Uranus, the restriction and the freedom and the restriction and the freedom. And I told you most people stay there. That's usually where most people stay. And that's fine. That's an adult. Go on your vacation, you work your 40 hours, you get your weekends off, that's fine. But spiritual adulting this month is going to be extremely crucial. Now, this starts like everything else at the moment of conception, but I'm going to walk you through. There's a lot of mythology this month, a lot. So I'm going to share several stories and the symbolism. There's a lot of symbolism this month. You're also going to hear me say some words that aren't pleasant, like rape and glutton and vain and hoarding and ego and narcissist, but that's what this is. This is the essence of human nature, and that's why it's amazing. So I ask a question. What is forensics to you? When you hear forensic psychology, what do you think of? Like, what do you think we should be studying this month? Crime. Okay, perfect. So I have a statement, and this is super important as a therapist, and I had a situation last night with a friend of mine. I say, consider the crime, not the criminal. We don't do that in our life. First of all, the first criminal we take off the hook is who? Ourselves. That's the first thing we do. So this is about owning your criminal, owning how you show up in your crime, the people in your life that show up as that criminal to mirror it to you. And in a lot of our ways, it's in the criminal justice system, with rapists, with robbers, with thieves, with abusers. So I'm not minimizing. I have to really stress this to you. I am not minimizing at all the importance of a criminal justice system, of prisons, of recidivation, or whatever that, you say the word, recidivism programs, things like that. Drug rehab, these things are important. That is not what the class is about. The way I teach it, I teach a depth psychology, a spiritual, a metaphysical, a symbolic viewpoint. So we go to the archetypes. So this is super important. This month, we're working with Chiron the orphan, Pluto the magician, super important, Neptune the innocent, these three. I don't have Black Moon on here, but Black Moon is obviously the prostitute. I have a whole poster on her separately. Let me find that. And then the doozy of all doozies and the truth of all truths, Lilith. That ends our spiritual adulting map. But we cannot get to Lilith, who is the hidden truths of the universe, the hidden truths of your psyche, if we do not look at the criminal. So in your blackboard, you're going to have your assignments and your sort of forensic-y, traditional psych stuff. In the depth psychology, obviously, that's where I come in. So we're going to do a lot of myth, a lot of symbolism, and these words are super important. And I've shared with you one myth that we're going to revisit today, which is the Rape of Persephone. And I have a poster, and I'll show that, and we'll revisit that. This is going to link the mother, father, child triad. This is going to link the truth is in the triangle. This is going to link dethroning Olympus. This is the culmination. Okay, it sort of wraps it all up. And it's super important because if you really do want to become a spiritual adult, and if you really want to help your client from a depth psychology perspective, from a perpetrator perspective, to use that word, from a shattering snow globe perspective, which is what I do, this is important. If not, you're going to do your own style. But nonetheless, it's important because these characters are going to show up in people's lives. So that's what this sort of class is about. So let's just use that statement for a second. Consider the crime, not the criminal. You get yourself off the hook. and you also take family and friends and people you love out. And we can't do that. The crime is the crime is the crime. So the way that you judge the perpetrator who raped your sister or broke into your car is the exact same treatment you need to have for your own criminal, which we're going to uncover this month in depth, and for everybody in your life. Because this is a mirror to your Pluto, which is going to be the sort of revelation, if you will. And so there's a lot of mythology, a lot of secret, hidden sort of stories in the Bible and stuff about this, okay? So here I have some of the myths that we're going to cover. Let me show you. I get so excited. I've been planning this for like a couple weeks, so I'm just like, oh my God, the day's here. I'm like a little girl, I'm so excited. Jesus. We obviously are going to talk about Jesus. Jesus was born on the fixed cross. In astrology, this is called Taurus, Scorpio, Pluto, that is the forensic planet, the criminal in your psyche, in your game of life. We've got to talk about Jesus because he's going to teach us how to resurrect from that criminal that we hold everybody dear except ourselves to. Okay? Kali Ma. This is also Kali Ma. This is probably a better representation. Okay, and you see she's got the severed head, she's got the sword, she's stepping on Shiva. Okay, she's very, very destructive. In any mythology, there is going to be a destroyer, there's going to be a creator, and there's going to be a balancer. Okay, so in Hindu mythology, we see Shiva, Brahma, Vishnu, and Vishnu is there, the guy with the shell. And in Christianity, it's the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. In every mythology, you're going to see three, the trimurti or the tripartite or the tri-something. Okay, that's actually from a myth we're going to talk about today called Cerberus. I talked to you about this before a little bit, the three-headed dog that guards the underworld, that's linked to thoughts, emotions, and desires. Those are the sort of three first truths of any spiritual tradition. And three is also positive, negative, neutral. We cannot do anything without those three forces. It's also the triangle, mother, father, child. It's also the thought that starts and materializes into everything that you live, principle of mentalism. So a lot of things are going to synthesize this month. Why I taught you this in relationships, why I taught you this in the subconscious. This class is going to be traditionally primarily about third step of the subconscious development. Does anyone remember the third layer of the subconscious? You've got the moment of conception. You've got pregnancy where you get your conditional version of love in your veil. The third, birth. The way you're birthed in the world is everything. I mean, everything is everything. For me, everything is everything. But in this one, there's going to be everything. Okay, that's going to be perpetrator. That's going to be your shatter of your snow globes. That's going to be your transitions. It's going to be linked to sex. It's going to be linked from moving from the waning stage of the triple goddess to the mother stage of the triple goddess. And again, that's at 14, male, female. It has nothing to do, it has to do with onset of puberty physically, but psychologically, it has to do with the transition. Linked to sex and puberty and hormones. We're going to link this to the body's homeostasis instead of the psychological homeostasis. I'm going to tell you about that. Then here's Morgan. If you've ever read any of like the King Arthur tales, she's great. This is Inanna. Inanna is actually who I named my first book after. The Seven Gates is the Sumerian myth of Inanna, the version of Lilith. We'll talk about that today. The striptease, the seductress, how we get to the hidden truths is through Inanna or Lilith or the Black Moon that you see is the last step of spiritual adulting. Mary Magdalene, we've all heard Mary Magdalene. We've all heard stories and gossip about Mary Magdalene having 7 demons. That's going to come into play this class. Very important. You have all those 7 demons too. And those 7 demons and the understanding of those 7 demons as Inanna or Lilith or the Black Moon is what's going to give you the hidden truths to the universe and make you equal in the age of Aquarius to the universe. So it's not that the universe has your back. The universe responds when you have your own back. And it's simply when you get to that point of spiritual adulting that this all happens. And then this is Merlin, the wizard. And I told you that on our archetype chart, Pluto, which is the whole class, is the magician. Mind you, these archetype names are at the very high vibration. The high vibration of Pluto is the magician. So if you've ever seen Wizard of Oz, have you guys seen Wizard of Oz? I mean, I know I'm old, but I think everybody has seen Wizard of Oz. What happens with Dorothy? She opens the curtain and realizes that there's no magician, and she's had the red shoes on all along, and she's the one who takes herself home. So that's the wizard is Pluto, the criminal we're going to look at. We're going to unveil that criminal, and it's going to lead us return home to Chiron, the 48 to 52, which will in turn lead us to Lilith, which is the hidden truths of the universe, aka your psyche. The thing with Chiron, when we make a pit stop there, we're going to try to avoid illness and paying a very high price to our parents via a sacrifice, and we're going to try to tweak this into an offering, a simple coin, like in the myth. Okay, so a lot of this stuff that I've been talking to you for months is going to come together in this class. It's very powerful. So I first want to start off with something that I've said for a very long time. Our body's homeostasis helps us. So if we don't drink enough fluids, our body will hold on to the liquid we have. If you're overheating, what happens? You sweat to cool yourself down. We want this. It's all in the name of survival. The body is built to have us survive, to stay alive. Our psyche is not. Our psychological homeostasis harms us. Important. Take that in. Your physical body that you basically have nothing to do with, it does what it has to do. You can't tell it when to do things, right? I mean, there's obviously some commands, but the major commands that keep you alive are there to help you. But your psychological homeostasis is there to harm you. So this class is about that. I'm going to explain where you find in the astrology chart and why you have 0 to 100 and why you don't achieve 48 to 52. That's going to be a big thing, and why you have to wait through all these neutralizers and hard criminals that come into your life to learn these lessons. Why you believe so fervently in God or faith or something. A lot of this is going to come together. Disclaimer, I have nothing against God. Obviously, I'm in the business of faith. This is not about your God and only God and no one else exists. Those are not truths that I subscribe to. So if I say something in my language that makes you raise an eyebrow to your belief system, stop me so I can be very clear. I am in total accordance with all spiritual traditions in the universe. The truth, and not the minutia that's the story that they want to buy in. Okay, that's my job, is to decipher those for you. Okay, I'm not minimizing, like I said, the criminals in the system, the criminals that exist in the world. I will use the word rape because it's inevitable in a class like this, because it's inherent in the story, in the myth, and it's not a minimization of anybody who's ever been raped. I just need to clarify that. These are words that are used in myth and story to make points. So I just want to make those disclaimers. Yes.
So you said that the psyche is trying to harm you. What about the reptilian movement in the will? Or is that part of the body?
It's part of the body, but it's the mind. It's a very good question. So that's exactly what those Cerberus heads are. Metis was swallowed by Zeus, was birthed Athena, helped by Hephaestus. We're at Hephaestus here. Yes, the actual fight or flight response, where the adrenals release the cortisol and all of that, is a helping mechanism, but it's an unhealthy response from the psyche. The body is the loyal servant to the psyche. Don't forget it. Dave Asprey had a guest on his podcast yesterday who, I don't know if she's a neuroscientist or something, but she had some severe injury and for 8 years was studying the brain and healing herself. And she discovered, hence my Vesica Pisces on the board, they've discovered now that the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere are actually kind of doing the same thing. Law of gender, as spirit have known this all along. The behavioral neuroscience, the MRIs, the earthly tools we have are confirming what we've known in the spirit world forever. It's wonderful for someone like me to see that happen. Again, spirit meeting matter. I've told you about the transgender community showing that we need to move in this direction. So this is just more and more confirmation of that. Okay, so the body in those respects, you will hold your breath, let's say, to stay into child, but it will force you to sort of breathe to get you out of child, to get you into Athena, into the wisdom, so you can make a choice, right? But the psyche is responding to, I mean, the body is responding to the psyche's needs, the unmet needs. Okay, so that's a really great question. So this is sort of like Hephaestus and beyond, if you will, in a roundabout way. So the first law, this class really is going to include all of the laws. They're all included. This really is a summation of all summations, but we're going to see several. Law of correspondence. The law of correspondence basically says, as above, so below. And this speaks to the transgender. I'll speak a little bit more of that in a moment. And the neuroscience, the idea that we're seeing spirit and matter meet in brain studies. In every tradition, this is super important because faith and God is a big part of this class. This is not that there isn't a universe or a creator energy. Of course, all is mind. That's what all is mind says. We are part of that. We are not a child of that. You know my views on that. The law of correspondence says, as above, so below. There are 7 planes in the universe. We are not privy as humans to all 7 planes. We are privy to 4. The highest plane that we as animal low consciousness beings are entitled to is the Akashic level. That's where the Akashic records are read that I do. It has to do with the 5th chakra. Notice how I always talk about the 6th, 7th, when the law of gender is balanced, transmutation in the 7th, and then we go right back to the 1st to do it all again. This is a quick jump start. In, out, get back to work. Keep refining your lead to gold in alchemy. Okay? That's why we stop pretty much here in terms of that. So whatever's happening on those higher planes of the universe, we really cannot see, but we can. We can see what's happening by what's happening in our surroundings. So for instance, the resurgence or this large transgender population, it's always been around, but now all of a sudden, and it's Pride Month, and we've got all these great, laws that are trying to come out, and people are fighting for these rights. That means that in the higher universal law of gender, to just give it a name, the balancing of masculine and feminine energies is being sort of prioritized, if you will, and that's why we're seeing that in this plane. And I showed you a lecture of the Amazonians, and we will see Amazonians today a little more, and then the swing to the toxic masculinity and us looking for that law of gender balance. So of course, as above, so below. So we do have a glimpse to God's mind when we see societally what's going on. We know we're in the age of Aquarius. People are seeking these teachings. People are seeking spirituality. All these hermetic teachings that were hidden for many, many years are coming to the surface. So we know these are confirmations of what's happening above is happening below. In every mythology, there is a God that is hidden. This is important. A God you cannot see. In Egyptian mythology, it's Isis, and she wears a veil. Moses goes to get the burning bush, and gets the 10 Commandments, and God says, paraphrase of the Bible, no one can see me. Whoever sees me will die. This is important. This is linked to this. In astrology or mythology in Greek, it is Pluto or Hades or Dispater. He has various names. We're going to talk a lot of to do with what are called chthonic gods. Chthonic gods are the gods of the underworld, the gods of the world we don't see, the lower world. Yes.
I know she's a demon, but would Medusa consider that?
Yes, she's one of those. Yeah. So we always have, we couldn't look at her, she would turn you to stone type of thing. So that sort of symbolism that you can't look at the face directly of God. So what law did the universe give us? Law of correspondence. I live my life by this law. There is nothing that enters my sphere that is not about me. And I'm telling you that if you take this law to heart, they're all great and I live by all of them, but this is my law, like almost exclusively this and mentalism. Because that's when you create everything. So if you have those two sort of concepts, really own them in your belief system like I do, it changes your life. So you are seeing God in other people, in the criminals, in the judgments. That's why I say judgments are confessions and they're great. Comes from this. So we do have access. Now those chthonic gods live in the lower world like shamans would call, or in the underworld in mythology. They're below, they're like the roots. If you want to know your psyche, you got to go to the root. And I've told you this, that when I got diagnosed, my guide said, pull it out by the roots. And I spent years studying my psyche, my subconscious. The origin is the root. Your psyche is your root. This class is the root. You understand this, you understand psychology, you understand mythology, you understand universal law, you understand metaphysics, you understand symbology. It's very powerful, this information. Of course, applying it, but then using it for your clients. These are the hard edges. This is part of your job of shattering snow globes, is to take a client here. So what I've sort of started doing is I shatter the snow globe, as is my job, and I'm calling it linked to this concept of transition and birth, that I'm the Pitocin. I'm the Pitocin so that the baby can come out, and then the person, because again, we don't help anyone, we help ourselves, the baby comes out, the birth of the real person, the truth comes to the surface. So we just provide the push, okay? Just like the doctors, the nurses, the medicine does, right? But the mother's the one pushing out the baby. So in the stage of subconscious development, the transition phase is the birth. What happens in the psyche when you leave the womb? You get your parent shadow aspect, but what happens in that transition? What do you think happens in the psyche when baby's coming out? Yeah, those are all truths. Yes, you need to meet your parents' needs. You were birthed for that, your origin story, all that. What happens psychologically at this level is that you have a perpetrator. When you leave, I guess I lost Sam. When you leave your mother's womb, that's your snow globe. Where was the first snow globe? When you leave the universe, right? The first castration was taking on the body or being in the womb. But the womb still resembled psychologically a snow globe. So you literally just hop from one snow globe to another. Both, well, the universal snow globe is intact. That's the one we want to get back to with Lilith. But what do? We go to the toxic water snow globe of coping, drugs, alcohol, all that nonsense. What happens is when you are birthed in the world, your psyche has its first transition, its first death, its first perpetrator. And who is the perpetrator? We're always everything, but in the story, your mom puts you into the world. Who's the perpetrator? Who perpetrates you? The world. The world is your perpetrator. And what are we told over and over and over again? The world is scary. The world is a scary place. You might have opposite parents. You might have parents that have traveled the world. I read this famous book a couple years back, something about a glass. It was really good. She's actually a very famous writer, and her parents choose to be home. Children of the universe and the sky be their home, and that's fine. That's the other stream to the coin. That's the other side of the coin. Okay, the world is your perpetrator. And what do you do when you come out of your, what's the first act you do as a human being when you come out of your mother's womb? You cry and you breathe. So we all in our psyche have a link that transitions equal crying, grief, we're gonna get there. It's associated with some pain, even if your birth with mine, like mine, super fast, doesn't matter. It's associated with something. Because, and Stanislav Grof, and I write about him in 7 Gates, actually has a 4-step model of what happens to, I don't think he uses the word psyche, to the fetus maybe, as it's going through life or death. Will I get through this? Will I get through this tunnel? Will there be life? This is extremely, extremely important in our psyche. Every transition you have is a life or death situation. Guess where you see this in the chart? In Pluto as a planet, in your ascendant. Your ascendant rules your first house. Your ascendant rules your birth, and it rules your transitions. And the ascendant is the point of consciousness in which you raise your vibration. And I said to you that the only job we have here is to raise our consciousness from the point of our parents' consciousness. Guess where your parents' consciousness is found? In the 7th house cusp, the descendant. The ascendant is the point of light. It's where the sun is coming out at 6 a.m. or whatever sunrise was on the day of your birth. It's where light comes out. The descendant is where the sun is setting at 6 p.m. of the day of your birth, and it's the house of your parents' marriage, your parents' psyche, not yours. And so how you live your transitions are through your ascendant. They're actually the point that bring you light, that bring you out of your darkness, which is the 7th house descendant, which is what your parents try to keep you in by not letting you own the shadow and showing them the lies and all the stuff I taught you. What's so important about this? We don't assimilate our ascendant. We think our ascendant is separate from us. That's why we have illness. It rules the first house of body. So whatever you have in your first house is how you're going to beat yourself up in your body. Because of course your body is what gave you pain when you came into the earth. It's what castrated your soul from the universal consciousness. You have to hate your body. So someone like me who has black moon in the first, of course I was bulimic, I had breast cancer, I mean everything known to man because my body was bad, every single one of us. And we're hoping that we can, with the spiritual adulting information, bypass the destruction of the body and purify our psyche, which is the Pluto, which is our deadly sins, and we'll talk about that all month, and just get to the truths of the universe without having to beat up our physical body. But that is why the ascendant feels like it's separate. And most mundane astrologers will say that's the masculine, that's your body. It's not the masculine. It's the one that if you actually confront and you realize you are that and you integrate that, it will raise you to the light. So I'll just use my example. I have an ascendant in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is Zeus, the whore, the drinker, the partier, the Dionysus. I name my dog Dionysus because I know I need to integrate this. I can't do that because I see it as separate, because I have to honor my descendant of my parents. So I skirt around Sagittarius. I become a university professor. I travel the world. That does not mean I've raised my consciousness and I've integrated it. I keep attracting the criminals in my life on my perpetrator triangle, and we'll get to that. are promiscuous drunks. Coincidence? I think not. The universe is not telling me to become a promiscuous. Don't misinterpret. That's at a very low vibration. So on the level of consciousness, I go to Sagittarius and I discover the highest vibration. And that's where I live. But that's how we integrate this. And so in our chart, Pluto is the carrier of riches, our spiritual wealth, our infinite wealth, our material wealth. And it's because we do not want to discover the depths of our psyche and disrupt our psychological homeostasis of staying in child. That first breath, that first cry, we never want to feel that. What did I tell you about the emotions? If emotions get stuck, you actually fully feel it, it becomes a feeling and it no longer owns you. So we stay with the holding our breath, we stay in child, so that we never really own that part of our psyche. And we keep going back to that and back to that. So yes, the body honors the fight or flight response, the release of cortisol, all the nonsense to keep you in child, because that's what you're telling the body to do, but it's a psychological command. So when we uncover our Pluto, our dispater, we go to the underworld, we go to the shadow, we go to the depths, we go to the darkness, we identify our criminal and our crime and hold ourselves to it, because it's all about ourselves, holding ourselves accountable. Then guess what? We get spiritual wealth and material wealth. But there's a big nonsense there with Neptune, the womb, the child, the innocent archetype, and we're going to get there. You cannot get to the magician and figure out that you have been the magician your whole life, that you are the Merlin, that you are the wizard, that you want. The magic you want is in you. No one wants that. We want the knight in shining armor. We want to win the lottery. We want the story of magic. We love that. That gets us very excited. Those are the psychological orgasms we have. Thinking that the possibility, of course we need illusion and possibility, but that keeps us from really wearing our own red ruby slippers and bringing ourselves home to Chiron, which leads us to the hidden truth. Does this make sense? Okay. Now, who is the fallen angel? Who is Lucifer in the Bible story? Satan, of course, own it. Satan, the devil. Does anyone know in Spanish what it's called when you give birth? Dar a luz. A luz is to the light. You get out of the darkness of the womb and you're brought to the light. Lucifer means a luz, the light bringer. Jesus brings light. Okay? There's no Satan, there's no devil, there's no burning fire in the bottom of wherever you think that is. That is in your psyche all day long, and it's guarded by a three-headed dog that keeps you in prison because of your thoughts, desires, and your emotions, and your FOFO, your fear of being found out. And if someone ever really knew the true you, oh my God. And God plays a very important role in this, whatever that is to you. Because everybody has some God. Even if you're atheist and you have no God, you have a God. 0 to 100 people. So that's going to be a big part of your perpetrator, rescuer, victim archetype that we're going to talk about. Super important. You can identify a couple questions with your clients. You'll see the whole story with this class, this month. So first, let's talk about the birth. Your birth is supposedly a snow globe, right? Your womb. In the womb, you get your dysfunctional Costco card membership. This is what love looks like, okay? You are here on earth to meet your parents' needs, as we know, to not get loved unconditionally by your parents. You are also here to be the secret keeper, the vault of your parents. That's your job. To carry that secret to the death. Okay? So this all happens at the moment of conception. You're keeping the secret because you were the only one in the marital bed. Remember the myth of Odysseus? The olive branch can't be separated from the marital bed. You're the olive branch. You were the only one there. And if you were a twin, your sibling, then you knew what your parents were thinking, what they didn't want anyone to know, what the secret was. It became you because the thought materialized into you, your body, your life, your existence. And you go to the depths of hell. The depths of despair, the depths of grief, the depths of depression, whatever it is, to keep that secret in a vault. Where do you think you hold that in your body? Your mind's everything, but where do you think physically? Nope. What's the root of all evil? Money. What else? Judgment's about? What do we judge? We judge anything gluttonous, envious, vanity, greed, all that good, juicy stuff that Satan's gonna come get you for. Lucifer's gonna come get you for. Lucifer's a fallen angel because of all the pride, because he thought he was God. Nonsense. You keep it in your hips. Okay? Your hips, your second chakra. Eros love. Told you. There's no such thing of agape love until you get to self-love. So your hips and your groin area hold all of it. When people have hip stuff, reproductive stuff, ovary, testicles, erectile dysfunction, anything to do with the hips and the groin sexual area, they are holding the secrets dearer than dearer than dearer. That's also what holds us up, okay? It's all second chakra related. Where did your parents have sex? Through the second chakra. Money is in the second chakra. Our unmet needs through the second chakra. Your birth through the second chakra. It's your second chakra and your AKA protection needs that you hold. Okay, and this is all going to come together as the month progresses. But you will hold the secret of your parents' thought at the moment of conception for dear life. Then you get transported into a womb. And now your mother gives you an extra special secret. Just you and her. Just you and her. She tells you the answer to get love. And every one of us manipulate the hell out of people and become the seductress. You seduce with your boobs because you promise food. You seduce with your vagina because you promise sex. You seduce with your pocketbook because you promised the girl a Louis Vuitton purse. Whatever it is, male, female. We seduce to get love. And our mother taught this to us. In the womb, those 9 months, shh, secret, don't tell anyone. And you go through life using that sign of your moon to seduce, to try to get your needs met. Because she said to you, I can't meet your needs. I can't meet your needs. But this is the key. Hence, the Chiron is a key when you meet your own needs to how to get your needs met. Seduce, seduce, seduce. And we all have a seductress way of being. You can see that in your Pluto, in your astrology chart, and your Scorpio cusp. Okay? So we're all seductresses. There's this great show called American Gods. And in the first episode, you see, it's Lilith, but I think they call her, I can't remember her name now, Belquist, I think they call her. And she's seducing, she's a prostitute in the show, and she has sex with a man, and the man turns into a baby, and her vagina swallows and swallows and swallows him up. That's what we do. That's what we do. We seduce to put that baby back into us so we can get our needs met. Because in our psyche, it's false. That's why it's the toxic water theory. We associate the womb and symbiosis, and the only way it could be manifested in the world is sex, with getting our needs met, knowing what I need. Your mom fed you, she took care of you, no words needed to be spoken. And all of us want the magic. All of us want someone to sweep us off our feet. All of us want someone to meet our needs. And we don't have to say a word. You should know. How many women have said, you should know? It's all of us, men too. So this snow globe, this toxic water, remember, we're here, has to shatter. It has to shatter. But we spend our entire life there. So Erickson, in his 8 stages of development, says that the first stage is trust, mistrust. When I used to have people at my house, I lived in Weston. It wasn't too complicated, but I knew show up like on MapQuest or Google Maps. Like I knew maybe Waze had it. I don't know, but I knew people had struggled with sometimes getting to the house. And I'm talking about people that might come every month. This wasn't like the only time you come. So I picked up on this and I would ask the first session, did you find the house okay? And the people that said, yeah, it was easy. I got here quick. I know the area, whatever. Mistrust. The people who couldn't navigate the GPS, they didn't know how, they couldn't read the signs, whatever, trust. And I mean this in a very psychological homeostasis, unhealthy way, okay? The innocence archetype, trust. I want to believe the world is safe. I will go to all lengths to believe the world is safe. Snow White syndrome, the innocent. The dwarves tell her, there is a witch and she's coming for you. But she lets her in and she eats the apple anyway. At all cost, I will not know my way around the world because I need a savior, because Neptune is linked, the innocent is linked to Jesus, the savior, the fisher of men. I'm going to explain all that symbolism in the Bible in this month. Okay, so we want, yes, we want a savior, and we're programmed to want this because we're all in the Western world. Hence why I say East meets West. You need a savior. It's Jesus somewhere. It doesn't matter your religious beliefs, because you all come from an Abrahamic religion. We talked about that at age 42, and that's what we're looking for. And the closest thing we have in our psyche is pregnancy. And birth is the perpetrator. Birth is the rape. Your first psychological rape is birth. Your first perpetrator is the world. So if the world is your rapist, who is your savior? In your life. You should be. You're thinking to evolve. Go back to the basics. If the world rapes you when you come out of your mother, what is your savior? Who is your savior? Mom or God, which is mom in the psyche. So every time the world feels unsafe, fight or flight, stress, cortisol release, oh my God, I stopped breathing. I'm going back into the womb. The breath is directly linked to the fight or flight response to go into child, the poster, and the pause is the teenager, the breath. Then as the adult, you make the conscious choice with Athena and hopefully with your intuition and guidance, which is Hephaestus. We hold our breath. We go back in. We get seduced. We want to be in symbiosis. The way most of us get into symbiosis with another person with a sexual relationship. And I told you that and why we use relationships to heal. Today we're going to read, not today maybe, but this month we're going to revisit the I and the we, the Vesica Pisces symbology, what it means. There's a lot of juicy, good stuff. If you like depth psychology, this is the month for you. This explains it all. So we want that conditional version of love, that we had a secret, that we were safe, we were fed. Okay? The minute we're pushed out, we have to breathe on our own. Anyone who has respiratory type of issues, asthma, is in this nonsense. Going back to the womb, going back to the womb, going back to the womb. Little kids, when they're little, they get a lot of upper respiratory, asthma, things like that. Even when you're older, respiratory illnesses are linked to this. There's fear associated. I'm getting raped. I'm in a transition, another word. The myth uses the word rape, and that's why I say it. Let me show you the poster, and I'll tell you the myth. So the Rape of Persephone takes you to your adult. This is the Vesica Pisces, and we're going to explain it. The Pisces symbol is there. The vagina is there. The we is there. The symbol of the fish of Christianity is there. The answer to our life is there. So, of course, the church slaps on a virgin, so you don't even discover your vagina in the earthly realm. And that was actually a big movement years back in New York. Women were taking classes where they would get a magnifying glass and look at themselves. They didn't even know what the anatomy of their vagina was. This is how messed up this Virgin Mary symbolism messed us up. Because the church knew not the vagina itself, the symbolism, that's like a Pisces. The Pisces, the fisher of men, Jesus, was the answer to our spirituality. Then we would stop giving them money, indulgences, they called them, to give you a certificate to heaven. It's true that the indulgences, the Pluto, the riches on your chart, in your psyche, are going to lead you to heaven, universal consciousness. That's the truth, because Pluto takes you to Black Moon, but not the way that they were selling with a piece of paper. So we'll unpack all that. So what happened is we hold the breath. We're scared of the transition. There's usually fear associated. Some people go full force. That's also linked to your birth story. Like I had no anesthesia. I came out flying and I fly through things. Now I have to stop and pause. As I've told you, the way to own the transition, the way to beat the psyche, if you will, in this is to do not the opposite, but the midpoint of your transition, of your birth story. So if you know the birth story, that's fine. That's wonderful. If you don't know the birth story, it's okay. Because all other transitions in your life are going to show you. All of them. They're going to repeat over and over and over again. The same exact emotion, the same fears, the same storyline. You will always have a perpetrator, you will always have a victim, and you will always have a rescuer. So if the world was the perpetrator, who was the victim in your birth story? Were you? What? If your mom is having you, the world perpetrates. You have a rescuer and a victim in that story. Who do you think your psyche records as the victim and the rescuer? Mom is victim. And guess who the rescuer is? You are. And we spend our life rescuing mom and dad. And I say mom and dad are the same at the end of the day, but mom, and it's very tied to mom, these transitions, especially with the moon, especially with women, child loss, inability to get have children, sick children, custody of children is very tied into this. And for those of you who attended the moon lecture, I told you all of the goddesses that rule the moon are virgin goddesses because they never transition from the waning to the full moon. This happens at 14 in age, 0 to 14. You have spiritual responsibility for your kid. 14, they get puberty. Your job is to let them do them, right? And integrate the shadow and all that, and we don't castrate. You don't have permission to move into the full moon and be the mother, the forbidden thing, the sex, remove the mask of the lie. You perpetuate the nonsense and you're constantly rescuing mom because there's a secret. and mom's always victim. So in our psyche, mom and dad are victims. We can't dethrone them. We have to save them. And how do we save them? By living their life or doing the opposite and never owning our own. So it's very difficult for the psyche to constantly be set up as the rescuer. Of course, you're going to be in constant fight or flight. You're going to constantly be going into the fire. I teach at another school, and I have this guy, and he's like, I want to write a paper about why firemen rush into the fires, and I'm reading this. It's not appropriate for the class. It was a bachelor's level research methods, and I nixed that. But obviously, it's this. So whatever your version of fire is that you keep running into to save mom and dad, is that version of leveling to your moon sign that you do to meet their needs over and over because you're the rescuer. But mom told you this is the way you seduce. So meet your needs in the meantime while meeting my needs in your psyche. It's a game. It's an absolute game. That's why Mercury has the winged sandals. And he's the one that's playing psychological musical chairs, and we can never know ourselves. So it's super, super important. So we never want to leave the waxing moon. We never want to leave the maiden. So if you never want to leave the maiden, how does the maiden turn into a mother? A 2 + 2 people, how does a maiden turn into a mother? Come on now. This is biology 101. No one's an innocent here. Really? You can't think of the word? Sex! Obviously sex. The evil word of the church. So, the myth of Demeter, Persephone, Pluto, Hades, Lucifer, Satan, the devil, yada, yada, yada. Okay? I've told you this before. This is falling. Well, let's see if it's safe. Demeter is Mother Earth. Mother. Okay? Whatever that means to you. Your mother could have died. Your grandmother raised you. At the end of the day, everything's mother, father. It doesn't matter. You have your story, whoever mother is to you. Okay? Mother Earth has a narcissus flower and keeps Persephone drugged all day long. And Persephone is like in innocent mode. Innocence, Neptune, the womb, the globe, the secret. You and I are one. I will meet your needs, lie, but what she tells her, right? And Persephone doesn't know better. You don't know better. This brings me to the snow globe. And I've said this before. There are 3 snow globes. You can have your quote-unquote intact snow globe, which is nonsense. Everyone has a crack, even if it's small. Those people who think they have very idyllic sort of snow globes, those people tend to have a trusting view of the world, according to Erickson. And those people are the ones that can't navigate directions. I am so trusting of the world, or I want to be so trusting of the world, me, that I can't for the life of me navigate anything. I get lost in my neighborhood to this day. Psychological orgasm, psychological homeostasis. That's not true. I went out on the ocean years ago and I learned to navigate Biscayne Bay just fine. Chalk it up to being a Pisces. Nonsense. I want a trusting view of the world. I'm a Pisces. I have an innocent archetype. I get lost in my own neighborhood. Mark that as trust, mistrust. When you ask that question to your client when they walk in the door, that question, you're going to know immediately the whole story. It's incredible. Second set of snow globe people, not good, not bad, pretty normal. You know, there could have been some conflict, maybe some drinking, a little cheating here and there. These normal sort of things that we chalk up to normal. Then there are really horrific snow globes. What the person might view as horrific. And those people tend to have a mistrust of the world. They know how to navigate everywhere. They can get to a foreign country, foreign town, they know the subway, they know the maps, they know it down pat. The middle snow globe is going to be your 48 to 52. It can come or go. You ask a couple questions and you'll get an idea. I'm going to tie this into why in a minute. Those are your three sort of snow globes. Intact, supposedly, horrific, and most of us fall somewhere in the middle. That is going to determine all this nonsense of the next steps, which is sort of the secret and the transitions. When someone has an intact or seemingly intact snow globe, again, they want the trust. The other group is what we call a control freak. Those people tend to be the perpetrators in the story. I don't know, because I don't work in the criminal justice system. But usually what happens at the psyche level is people that come from horrific snow globes are the ones that we see that do these heinous crimes, right? And when we start researching them, my daughter's very much into that. So she'll tell me, oh, so-and-so this, and their parents did this to them. And you start seeing the correlation at the earthly level that they did heinous crimes. It's linked to the fact that their snow globe was dirty, their snow globe was shattered, their snow globe was broken. The world is not a place to be trusted. The world is so mistrusting. The world is such a perpetrator. I am in the world. I must follow that. It can go both ways. We see this all the time. Alcoholic parent can have an alcoholic child and a sober child, the 0 to 100. This is what shows up in families. Their contracts, we decide 0 to 100. Neither one is true, because sobriety is the other end of gluttony, and it's 0 to 100. What happens? And I've told you this before, law of cause and effect. We're given sort of our karmic baggage upon conception. Why do you think we leave the universal consciousness? Why do you think we leave the beautiful universal snow globe to come into this toxic water snow globe of the womb that then turns into our 0 to 7 dirty ass snow globe? Why do you think we do that at the soul level? This is soul. Why leave, quote unquote, heaven? Why leave the cosmic womb? Anyone ever think? Because you cannot grow spiritually when you're out of a body. When you die, you go to something called a plane or a loka, depending on the vibration of your work that you've done karmically in your lifetime. You can only shift that loka or that plane by coming back here and doing the work. Remember, Ganymede saw his father and cried and longed to come back, and it's the cycle of samsara, of reincarnation. Until you purify, the thing is, a purification is another psychological trick, another psychological homeostasis that isn't true. The purification system is our intestines, right? And I guess our kidneys with the urine and all that. In our psyche, it's the 0 to 100 nonsense. I'm going to take the laxatives. I'm going to stop spending. I'm going to go on a man cleanse. That is linked to Pluto. So the minute you get on a body, you are raped by the world, you're impure, you're dirty, you become Lucifer, Satan, Hades, and you're at the bottom of the barrel. First chakra. And it starts all over again and repeats and repeats and repeats. Again, law of correspondence. As above, so below. You may not know what plane you're at, but your life is telling you what plane you were at before incarnating. I mean, just 2 plus 2. So, Demeter and Persephone are frolicking in the woods, and this is an intact snow globe. Okay? BS. She's getting her daughter intoxicated. She never wants her daughter to leave the maiden. She wants to be a mother and identify herself as Mother Earth forever. And therefore, she drugs her kid. It's the same secret lesson mom taught you in the womb. If you do this behavior, aka your moon sign, you're going to get your needs met. Secret it doesn't work, but that was the secret. And the secret to Demeter was the flower, aka the moon sign. Keep her drugged in the fancy snow globe. The funny thing is that it doesn't matter which of the 3 snow globes you come from. If it's quote unquote intact, mistrust, dirty, or in the middle, you view the world through that snow globe. Pristine, with a slight crack, or shattered. That's how you view the world. That's how you show up in the world. What happens at the psyche is you view yourself the perpetrator, or you view yourself the victim or the rescuer, depending on the trust, mistrust, or how dirty your snow globe is. That's the only thing that changes. You're going to see, I'm going to give you an activity. You're all 3. But to identify which one you need to fix, you need to figure out where your perpetrator, victim, and rescuer came from. I asked you the story of your mom and you rescuing and the world being the perpetrator, because that's the first one. But that story doesn't have so much relevance as a story you've lived in life. So we'll get there. So it doesn't matter which snow globe. All of us, no matter how dirty, even if our house was conflict and addiction, think that we're in a snow globe with a narcissus flower, that we're drugged and this is the best thing ever. It's a psychological orgasm. It's a psychological homeostasis that messes you up, because now you see the world that way. And this brings me to the traffic question or the map question. When you are so distrusting, you need uber control. Uber control. You are in control. Therefore, you are more likely in your story to be the perpetrator. The one that dumps, the one that steals, the one that seduces. When you're in a trusting snow globe or a trusting psychosis that you can't navigate your world, you're acting more like the victim, and you're waiting to get perpetrated, and you're waiting to get rescued. So that should give you an indication. Still control. One is overt, I'm the perpetrator, and the other one's more covert. So in essence, the cleaner the snow globe, so to speak, the more manipulative, the more cunning, the more victim, and the more rescue you are. You choose which one you want. You want the clear out perpetrator that tells you that he's going to perpetrate you? Or you want the conniving seducer that sneaks up and doesn't tell you? That's for you to determine. Everyone has their thing. Plus, you're mirroring usually the opposite of what you are. So this gives you some insight to your own psyche. So they're in this intact snow globe, supposedly. And Hades, sitting at the bottom of the earth, bored, rips open. Is symbolism important? Rips open the earth. What is the Mother Earth? What does the Mother Earth symbolize? It's in the language. Mother Earth. Mother. How do you become a mother? And how do you get a baby inside of you? By having sex. Okay? This is super important, people. Not from a sex act, from the symbolism. You must be raped. Mother Earth, in order to produce Persephone, must have been raped. We see this in the myths all day long. And in order for Persephone to get permission to become the mother, she had to be raped. You were raped when you left the universal womb, and you were raped upon birth, your first transition. Super important. Your transition tells you everything about the psyche and the lack of homeostasis, or the unhealthy homeostasis. So when he rips open the earth, he is creating a hole. He is creating a window. Yes. It doesn't matter. It's symbolic. You're new, so I'll have to catch you up. Okay? It does not matter. So that opening is important. The opening allows what? When you let something open, what is allowed in? anything, but something in particular, energetically. If I open a dark space, like my legs or the earth, what comes out? Light. Light comes out. So the only way that you are going to understand your shadow is by opening that sucker up and letting light come out. That's why it's the light bringer. That's why it's the bringer of light. That's why it's a la luz. So Hades, by raping Mother Earth, light enters into his darkness. The reason you oscillate, and I use that word intentional because that's from the homeostasis literature of the body. The reason you oscillate from 0 to 100 and then eventually you're 48 to 52 if you do the work is because you're trying to get light in. You're trying to shine light on the dark, but you don't know how because your psyche harms you instead of helping. So Hades rips open Mother Earth. Now, is this opening as big as these? No. It's actually quite small, isn't it? It's a tight little opening. We're going to get there, but that is the Vesica Pisces, the I, and the we. And I teach you in The Truth is in the Triangle, the I is you, the other I is your partner, and the we is the thread and the relationship. And now I'm going to take it into the universal system, the world system. So in 7 days, I've given you the individual system. In Truth is in the Triangle, I've given you the couple system. In Dethroning Olympus, I've given you the family system. And this class, I'm going to give you the world system. You want to be a savior? You want to be a rescuer? You want to be Jesus? That's Truth 11 on my path, the truth of service. This class is how you get there. And it's through this symbol. And it's very little, this opening. Very little. I'll explain all of that. So when he rapes Persephone and brings her to the underworld, he gives her a pomegranate. The pomegranate, when you open it up, is red. It resembles the vagina. It's the color of Scorpio. It's the sensuality and the sexuality. That's the symbolism of the pomegranate. The thing is that the pomegranate is a bunch of seeds. There's symbolism of that. You want your riches? You want the wealth, spiritual and material that is due to you? Open your pomegranate, people, and eat 6 seeds. The symbolism is that she ate 6 seeds. And there was a negotiation or a contract down in Pluto and Hades that if you ate anything, you became the wife of Pluto. So what happens is she eats 6 seeds. So now she is committed to being his wife 6 months out of the year. Okay. Who is the perpetrator in this story? Who is the victim and who is the rescuer? Demeter goes to Zeus. Of course, Zeus is the god. And Zeus says, Hades, you gotta give Persephone back because there's no fruits, there's no vegetables, the birds are dying, the trees are drying up. Mother Earth is sad. Mother Earth is not going to produce if she's sad. Well, Pluto doesn't really like too many people dying. He's very much a control freak. So wherever you have Pluto in your chart and Scorpio, you are a control freak, and there's a lot in that sentence, what a control freak really is. So he's like, oh, damn, if she's not producing food, people are going to die. I'm going to have way too many dead people down here. Nah. So Pluto decides that since she ate 6 pomegranate seeds, she would give her to her mother 6 months out of the year, and 6 months out of the year she would live in the underworld. The story goes that spring and summer, Persephone's with her mother, Mother Earth is happy, that's why the birds chirp, etc. And fall and winter, hence the colors of the pomegranate, the fall, everything's dying, is when Persephone's in the underworld. What does this mean for you? Your pomegranate, your seeds, you have fecundity. Fecundity is the ability to birth and birth and birth. obviously within the limits of the earthly world. And I am not talking about babies, my friend. No octomoms here. I'm talking about spiritual births, books, poems, relationships, like friends. If you want to do service to humanity, nonprofits, whatever it is that you want to birth from you. You have open a pomegranate, but you cannot birth anything in a state of balance, in a state of truth, in a state of light. No one wants to birth a dark baby. You want to birth a light baby. Light meaning beautiful and healthy and happy. I'm not talking about color skin, obviously. Has to do with Pluto. You want the light, you got to go to the dark. I told you the whole pineal gland, the melatonin regulates the dark, the sixth chakra, you know that. So you have immense ability to birth. Children too, and children are often the price we pay. The maiden goddesses rule the moon signs because they keep us in child. The moon keeps you in child, honoring your mother, rescuing your mother, never moving like Persephone into mother mode. And what do? You pay a price by not having kids, killing your kids, losing custody of your kids like I did. Very clear how I live that out. Marked on the chart. In our psyche, there's a price to pay. You're going to lose your virginity. You're going to go into the underworld. You're going to become the wife of someone. You're going to have 6 months away from mom in delusion, honoring her needs. Oh, buddy, you are going to pay. And it is very programmed in our psyche because of ancestral and transgenerational lineage that we pay by losing children, stillbirth, miscarriage, custody, whatever. Because in your chart, Pluto is the perpetrator from many ancestral trends from prior. It's the perpetrator in the system. It could have been a rapist in your family. It could have been a slave owner in your family. It could have been an abductor in your family. And we have loyalties to that. So when I do ancestral astrology, we speak to those themes, and we all have one. And one of the ways was killing the baby, shoving the baby in the earth. That's in a mythology, and we'll talk about that during the month. There's actually in myth, I'm forgetting the word, it starts with an E, where they would leave the baby in the field and then blame God that the baby died because they didn't want the baby. Hansel and Gretel, in the story of Hansel and Gretel, what happens? The father takes Hansel and Gretel out to the woods so that they could get lost in there because the stepmother said there wasn't enough food. The original stories, if you read these original fairy tales, they are dark ass. Because they're the crime or they're the criminal in our psyche. And people couldn't handle that level of truth, so they added stepmother. Because how could a mother leave her own kid in the field to die? How could a mother choose her food before eating her kid? And the original Hansel and Gretel story is that the mother and father put the kids in the forest. They changed it. And then Disney comes and no mother's around because the mother can't be evil. The mother has to be the all-elusive God that's unattainable, that, oh my God, I miss so much. Really is your maternal universal womb that you're looking for, what the symbolism there. The crimes were so heinous that we couldn't handle it. The first time I ever watched Game of Thrones, the first episode, I was watching it with someone, and the last scene, I think, is the sister and brother having sex. And he looks at me to see if I make a flinch in my face. And he's like, you didn't flinch. I said, ancestral astrology. We all have incest. We all have rape. We all have abductions. We all have castrations. These things were in our lineage. They're in our psyche. Consider the crime, not the criminal, people. This is in you. The capacity to be dark is anyone in those jails is in you. Do not kid yourself. Mercury keeps you playing psychological musical chairs, and then we fluff up spirituality and fairy tales and Disneyland to not see the truth. That's That's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. So you need to know your criminal. And the one you judge the most, the one that you would have the organization for, domestic violence, rape victim, as the archetype. I'm not saying that you would be the domestic violence person or the abuser, please. I've got to be very clear with this day and age, okay? Archetypally, symbolically in your psyche. Well, last I checked, the myth of all myths, Demeter kept her daughter drugged. So do not think you don't have that in you. There is a chickadee is born, and the chickadee needs his beak to come out of the shell, right? If you help the chickadee out of his shell, he will die. He will never be able to feed himself. The butterfly, I was in Costa Rica many years ago at this butterfly garden thing, and they had all these chrysalises, and they had like dead butterflies. And the guy is like, if you help the butterfly out of the cocoon, it will die. It can never fly. As parents, we keep our children from feeding and flying. That is the crime at the end of the day. We do it to ourselves. We don't let ourselves feed and fly. We don't let our children feed and fly. We don't let our partners feed and fly. All for failure to set non-negotiables, rules, structure, and why I use this symbol in the truth in the triangle, and why you're going to see it's the way to become Jesus in your life if you really, truly want to be a world servant. You got to let people feed and fly, and you are not the end-all, be-all of anything. But Pluto is controlling, because when you get out of the womb into this perpetrating world, you lose all control. You had no control in the womb, really, but you felt your needs were met in this dysfunctional way, and mom knew what you needed. She read your mind. She fed you. There was warmth. That's why it's toxic waters, and that's why we have poor coping. Pluto also rules the bad characters, the gangs, the violence, the crime, the drug addict, the halfway houses. Because it's the way we go back. The transition, we go backwards into the womb. So we got to go through that life-death process that Stanislav Grof talks about to get back into the womb. That's part why our transitions are so fearful and scary and hard, or sometimes you might date the wrong guy, or you might end up with, a hangover, and that's like, oh my God, I got to stop that. An attempt to get back to the womb. So when you got out of the womb, you're like, I have no control. What do? You cry. Maybe somebody comes to change your diaper. Maybe somebody comes to feed you. Maybe somebody comes to hold you. But you have no clue. You have no clue if your needs are going to get met. And at that moment, during that transition period between Neptune and Pluto of your birth, transitioning into the perpetrator of the world, you develop a control freak behavior. That early. You're like, ooh, there's a perpetrator. Let me be the perpetrator, or let someone perpetrate me. Let me be the rescuer. Let me be the. You're all three. But you're going to identify this month which one is which in your story and how you live it out, so you could see how you live that out. Ultimately, you're all three. You're the criminal. You're the crime. You're all of it. You're your savior you've been waiting for. But we do have a story, and this is where the client story informs and helps us figure it out. So at that moment, you're like, I either control the hell out of stuff in an overt way or a covert way, and you develop your Pluto, your deadly sins. You're over gluttonous or opposite. You're overly vain or opposite. You're overly lustful or opposite. You're overly prideful or opposite. You want to use the deadly sins, you want to use the repus, you want to use the virtues, you want to use the Enneagram, all the same. Anger, passive aggressive. So the other day, this lady stops me in the hall. My husband has anger issues. I said, oh, so you're very passive aggressive, aren't you? It's never about your husband, my friend. I am a perpetrator. That is what I do for a living. I give you the shot of Pitocin so you can birth yourself. I'm proud of that, and that's here. That's my snow globe shattering. Everyone needs help being pushed. You're going to see later in the month, because I'm going to try to link the psychological with the physical homeostasis. Every gland in the body, right there, hormones and glands, are all linked to transitions. We call it puberty, we call it menopause, we call it thyroid. Nope. Anytime there's an upset or you're dealing with hormones and glands, you are going through a transition in your psyche. You're back at the moment of birth. Of course, at the biological level, we attribute, and you go to the endocrinologist and they solve your problem but we don't manage symptoms in this class. We go to the root. So we gotta know the root. So at that moment, during that transition, you develop your 0 to 100. Obviously, you know that you got it at the moment of conception. It's in your bad buckets, and it's your parents' thought that you're keeping the vault. You know that. But that, if you want the story, is at that moment. What's the next major transition? What?
After mother or before?
From maiden to mother. Men and women. After birth being the hugest transition, you might know your birth story. You may not. Doesn't matter. If the client knows it, great. We'll extract the essence. What's the next major transition? No. From maiden to mother. What's the story about? What transition did Persephone have to become mother and wife? She had to have sex. Your sexual transition is your next major transition. You are going to live out that exact thing from the moment of your birth. If your birth was easy, you might have a 2-second little encounter in the closet. And this does not necessarily mean penetration. This is based on the client. When I ask clients, I ask them their first sexual encounter. They decide if it is masturbation, if it is that they were touched, if it was penetration. You don't decide that for the client. The client determines. The question is, what was your first sexual experience? That's it. That experience is the birth experience. So if you don't know the birth story, you have the sex story. What's the next major transition if from mother to crone? Again, men and women, not just men. It's the next biggest transition after you get raped and have sex.
You start having a life with your partner?
Okay, you might get married, you might have children, right? That 28-year-old when you castrate yourself. That transition, link to. You're still here. And then what about from mother to crone?
Then your kids leave you.
Your kids leave you, there's grief, empty nest. And what happens to most people during that transition?
They don't know what to do.
They have no clue what to do. And that's why I tell you, the years of the full moon, the years of the mother are wasted years. And if we use the mirroring, if we use the law of correspondence, they don't have to be wasted. Because we'll see our children are our unintegrated shadow. We will integrate that, do our works that come before us, and you only help them feed and fly for 14 years. Legally till 18, and if you want to buy them a car and pay for college and stuff like that, not my problem. Spiritually, you only help them feed and fly for 14 years. That is why the transitions at 14 and why usually that sexual relationship or rape happens 14 to 16. If you push it to 18, the one forbidden thing and all the stuff. You know. Retirement, grandkids. Again, if you stay at this freedom level. I had a client admit yesterday, I kind of am glad that I don't have grandkids, because then I would be so into them that I would take away time for myself. So you see that those people, not that having grandkids is bad, but you see a lot of those people in Uranus, in that liberty castration, freedom castration thing. I'm going to go visit the kids, or I have to work, or I'm going on vacation with my spouse, or I have to work, whatever that is. They go through that Saturn Uranus thing because they stay there. Okay, so you can add grandchildren to your repertoire, but that should not become your life. And I've told you before, Uranus is avenged by Jupiter. So your grandchildren sort of avenge you and continue work that you didn't do, but you don't raise your grandkids. That nonsense there is a lineage and ancestral stuff that is not healthy. There is a reason you're in Crone. And what transition are you preparing for in Crone? Death. And I told you that every single skinny cow, every single transition is to teach you how to die. If you do not know how to die, you've missed life. And death is linked to attachments. What is the planet of attachment? Where do you get your attachment style? The oxytocin, when you look at your mom's eyes in the womb, when I taught you all about attachment style. From the moon. The secret your mother told you of how to manipulate and get your needs met is linked to your attachment. Do you attach emotionally? Are you an emotional hoarder like me? Are you a thoughts hoarder? Are you fill in the blank? Any of the deadly sins, any of the vices, have at it. The truth is we're all everything. We have all seven, and we'll get to that when we do, that's the striptease, that's the unveiling of Lilith. That's the prostitute. The prostitute is the only person in history that owns it. I get paid to get sex. Clear as day. No nonsense of veils and dancing. Ridiculousness. So when we get there, we're ready to die. But look at all the work we have to go to try to hide that we're all prostitutes. You hoard your emotions, you hoard your thoughts, you build a thing, you blow it up, you get divorced, you get raped, you lose your kid. You pay so heavy for the truth. And I'm telling you, it's linked to our Western psyche that we're not allowed, because of the church, to have the truth. Because the pagans and the witches, which are just the crowns, the wise women or men, the wizards, the Merlins, are from the old time the truth keepers. There's always been some hermeticism and some hiding of teachings and stuff. The magic of it, that's always existed. But upon Greek being sort of splashed by Roman Catholicism, it went out. It went out the window. So what do we usually do? We have a loss. We've got to get sick to get permission to see the veils. Most people stay here at the 0 to 100. And the nonsense of their life stays here, trying to hide it, We're all gluttons, we're all hoarders, we're all lustful, we're all envious, we're all vain, all of it. We're all prideful. The 0 to 100 is an attempt to purify. Instead, one of the myths we're going to cover is the one of the Hydra, and how you have to bring the Hydra to the light. That's why it's the light bearer, the Lucifer, Jesus, and all that. This is making sense in terms of criminal in your psyche, that you're the crime, you're the criminal, you're everything. Okay. So that is a setup for what this month's about. We're going to talk a lot about perpetrator, victim, rescuer, how that played out in your life. Just to kind of finish up, we don't have to die right when we discover Lilith. Hopefully we could speed it up so we can have some enjoyment of these hidden truths. But that time frame, and that's why I chose those ages for the adulting process, are very much linked. Notice that I have a rape at each one. Your initial rape of transitioning into the world, you have no choice. You're given your body. That's how your soul purifies and goes to the next plane or loka if you do the work. Your transition of actual having sexual intercourse and whatever that means to you or not, if you go the other opposite end of lustful, is also a rape. Psyche's there. And then the rape oftentimes viewed as empty nest or getting fired or retirement or I'm old, however you play that out. All of those transitions are linked to that initial transition from birth. The Saturn cycles, the skinny cows, are to help you so that these aren't so hard. The skinny cows show up as neutralizers and Valor years. See how I'm layering it from here? So that the transition and these major rapes and deaths aren't so dramatic. So you have prep work in your psyche that you have to let something go. So I'll see clients and be like, well, this was a true story. It happened a couple weeks ago. I said to her, in 2 years, your husband can die. He can leave you penniless, or you can break an arm. How do you qualify those three things? Are they equal? Is being left penniless, being a widow, and breaking your arm equal? Which one would you prefer? Well, I would think that breaking your arm is better than be left widowed and penniless. Just logic tells me, right? So how do I present to a client that those are the options?
Unless you're a surgeon, then you don't want your arm.
Okay, well, now you're going to logic. We don't do much logic in here. So if you'd rather lose your spouse and all your money, okay, great. Then that's your choice and you have a right in your psyche to pick. So I present these three options to her. And she's like, how are they so far-fetched and they're not random? The thing is that we decide the punishment. We decide how much we're going to pay at each rape. How much do you owe? How big is the sacrifice for you to have your freedom, for you to be an adult, your parents, for you to figure out your value system? So I now know in her story, because I knew that there was a story, and I asked her, I said, what loyalty are you? These are just loyalties. We have loyalties to a story we don't even know. I said, what loyalty are you doing here? I said, there's a lot of money issues here. You should have a lot of money. Pluto is wealth. It's our crime. Criminal. And what do criminals do? They steal. They steal your money, they perpetrate. So we have a judgment when we want a lot of cash. Greed, right? That's the vice we've been told. So I said, you have a big tendency here to have a lot of money. What's the story? I said, your husband's going to drop dead. Seriously. I said, your husband's going to drop dead in 2 years or leave you penniless and divorced. Her father and mother got divorced when she was 3. Her mother married an extremely wealthy guy who dropped dead and left them penniless. So she can have that loyalty or she can break an arm. That can be fixed in 12 weeks and you could go back to surgery. Nonsense, people. Nonsense, the price we pay. In the myth of Sharon, who was the carrier of souls at the river Styx, and we're going to talk about more about all these myths, you have to give him an obol, a penny, in the mouth for him to transport you. When you transport yourself to own your rape, to get out of your mother's garras, claws, to become a maiden, out of a maiden and become a mother or a crone, you pay so heavily. The myth says pay an obol. Pay a piece of cake, give $1. You go to the church, you give $1, you light la velita. No one's looking, no one knows, God isn't going to smite you, but no, you pay heavy. Because we have a tendency, a program in our psyche that freedom gets cost. And I taught you that last week, right? There's a price for freedom. And of course, if you're going to stop meeting your mother's needs, you're going to pay it heavy. And you know how you're going to pay? Besides whatever you lose by her calling you, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you come to Thanksgiving? You spend more time with your in-laws than you did with me. The nonsense. Feed and fly, people. Let your kids live. Nonsense what we do. Nonsense. All in the name that you might find out that you're a crone who has no identity and no clue and is an emotional hoarder and is greedy and is selfish. And you don't want to find that out about yourself, so you hoard your kids and you hoard and you hoard. No one belongs to you. Nonsense. And we're going to get to the one unmet need because there's only one need that anyone can meet for you. If we're going to even say that there is a need. And that's why the Vesica Pisces, the truth is, it's all going to come together. One need. And no, we can't say that. It's nonsense. So you pay. I had a client yesterday. Francis, oh, my money is tied up and I want to meet a woman. And I see it all the time. This guy is going to have a lot of money and a woman. But every time I open his records, I see a damn boat in the middle of the ocean, no wind in his sails. He is stuck himself, his own psyche. You do this to yourself. You do this to yourself. No one is doing nothing to anyone. And so I asked him, I said, so when's the first time that, and I use the language of something ends suddenly. Okay, so in our psyche, when something ends suddenly, we don't get closure. We love that word in this society. Closure, I have to be friends. Nonsense. You don't have to be friends with anyone. Nonsense. You need closure. Close with yourself and move on, person. So I said, when's the first time that you didn't have closure, that you didn't have, you had an abrupt ending? He's like, oh, the love of my life, blah, blah, blah. I said, so how'd your money go after that? Of course, I know the answer. He's like, oh, I did real well. Of course you did. You want your riches? You got to give up your partner. We are programmed. And Pluto tells us no. Funny, the church adopts this. You want your soul to go to heaven. And I just think it's so funny that the word is indulgence. You pay and you get a big certificate called an indulgence. It's in the word, indulge. Indulge in your spiritual wealth and in your material wealth. That's why Jesus says, give Caesar's what is Caesar's, give God's what is God's. You can have it all, people. Maybe not all at once. You can have it all. So this guy, he pays, loses the girlfriend, makes the money. And I said, well, do you want to rewrite that story? Because it's just a loyalty. And of course it comes from your parents, and of course it comes from your childhood and all that nonsense. But it's like, we're just emotional loyalty after emotional loyalty, program. All because we don't want to bring our perpetrator or our victim rescuer, depending if you're uber ugly, toxic water, not toxic water, but dirty snow globe, or uber light and bright, perfect little snow globe. You pick. We used to have a student in here who her mother was a virgin. She had given her life over to Christ and now was the Virgin Mary. Who do you think she played in the story, my student? Who's left? The devil, Mary Magdalene. She was the prostitute. She was a stripper. She was extremely promiscuous. There was no other person in the story. Persona of the Virgin, I was taken, and she surely isn't Jesus. So she had to be Mary Magdalene. But not in a Lilith, removing of veils, hidden truth, spiritual sort of way. No, in a victim way. So this is how you have to understand how your psyche is. You're all three all the time. You're playing the musical chairs of the perpetrator, the victim, the rest of That's your psychological orgasm. You are having a hell of a ball in your head at all times, living it out in your life, and then you say it's the person that violated you or did you. Again, I am not minimizing people that have been raped or have had crime. Please, this is not what I'm saying. Very important disclaimer. I'm talking about the game you play in your head. These are players in your head, and you are doing this nonsense all day long. So, you come from the universal snow globe, you go into your mother's womb, and you're perpetrated by the world. And you're in this dance all day long, all life long. Then Pluto comes. And Pluto rapes Persephone. Because we all need help. We all need a helper. We need someone, in my case, I call it shattering snow globes. We all need a perpetrator. We all need someone to just give us a little nudge, a little kick in the butt, a little Pitocin so that the baby comes out. We all do. And what happens is we grieve. Our story unfolds where a perpetrator shows up to help us through. At the earthly realm and at the earthly consciousness, I do not minimize a victim's story. I am a therapist. I hold space. I have compassion, love, and empathy. Spiritual consciousness, we have to buy into, if you do, the law of mentalism. All is mind. It's all created from our psyche. We created all of it. And I will not apologize for a metaphysical law that I subscribe to. I will be the space to hold your grief, as when I was going through my tough time, people held mine. But I always took personal responsibility. I just didn't know how to get out of it until I was ready. That leads us to oftentimes creating illness because we're so sad. Illness is something our body needs, our psyche needs, I should say, as permission to create space to say, no, I can't take care of you. I can't meet your need right now. I can't, Mom. I got to take care of myself. My hope is to help people bypass the need for illness, that they have permission to return home to themselves. We're going to talk about manning the fires in Hestia. I know we're over time, or minute. I'll wrap up. During the month. But I understand that illness serves a purpose. So it takes me back to the ascendant in the astrology chart. That's the physical body. The sixth house is also the physical body and illness, but the physical body, the birth, all that happens in the ascendant. And so we use our body oftentimes because we know nothing else at a consciousness level. In the story of Chiron, for those of you who are new, he was hurt in his leg, in his physical body, he had a wound. That's what we do. Oftentimes we use our body as a shield, so to speak, in the war of life. And we use our body, we use scars, we use sort of, it's like our armor, so that we get permission to finally find Lilith and unravel and find the hidden truths. So this is the sort of thing we're going to cover this month. It's the end of the spiritual adulting brain. You guys are new. I have all the videos of the spiritual adulting series, and I'll talk to you guys in a minute. From before, if you want to catch up, but you can always ask me questions. So I'm going to stop I'm going to take attendance, Sam. I'm going to stop the recording.